All right, good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight to our local control and accountability community presentation. Before we get started, I am going to have a quick announcement regarding interpretation. We're just working out an audio issue. We'll be right there. There we go.
Para servicios de interpretación, aquí están las instrucciones. Teléfono o tableta, oprima los 3 puntos. Oprima la opción de Language Interpretation o interpretación. Seleccione el idioma Spanish. Deslice el botón de Mute Original Audio. Si está usando una computadora, haga clic en el icono del globo localizado en la parte de abajo de su pantalla. Escoja el idioma Spanish. Seleccione Mute Original Audio para no escuchar los dos audios.
Thank you to Iris. Good evening. My name is Kimber Sargent. I'm Director of Categorical Programs for the San Bernardino City Unified School District. Before we begin our evening presentation, I would like to just take a pause to recognize those that are here with us in person as well as virtually before we jump into our objectives. Tonight, we do have several of our LCAP leads with us. As I call your name, if you would like to introduce yourself or say any words, we invite you to do so. So I will start with Sarah McCain here representing our Employee Development Department with Human Resources.
Hi, good evening. I'm really grateful to be here for this update, and we're eager to support you with any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much. We also have here representing the Assessment and Educational Technology Department, Dr. Susan Keidel. She's here with us in person. Is there anything you'd like to say before we start? Okay. She says welcome, and we actually will be hearing from her shortly as she joins us as a co-presenter for tonight's information. Next, we have representing secondary instruction. We have Dr. Agnes Kumi. Agnes is here with us in person. Would you like to say anything before we start? She gives a large smiling hello to everyone for this evening. So thank you so much. As we have any dignitaries who join us this evening, we will pause the presentation just to welcome them, pause for a moment to allow for them to address our group here, and then continue with the presentation. I am presenting on behalf of Educational Services under the direction of Mrs. Anna Applegate, our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services. It's my pleasure to be here tonight with my Categorical Programs Department team. They're here supporting us both in person as well as virtually. We appreciate your time tonight. We are scheduled for this presentation to last between 5:30 and 7 p.m. So we want to go ahead and get started on our work for tonight. On your screen, you can see the objectives that we have for tonight's presentation. We will take a look back at our local control and accountability or LCAP goals for the 2022-2023 school year. I am excited to share with you a few of our communication tools that we've developed to help build a shared understanding of our LCAP plan. We will review some of our mid-year highlights. Those include our data highlights, as well as our action highlights. During this portion of the presentation, you will hear from both myself as well as Dr. Keidel. And in the last portion of today's presentation, we will go over the annual update to the LCAP, which happens each year. We'll talk about that process and how that gets entered into our plan for our district. So without further ado, there we go. We'll start back with a look back at our goals that we have within our LCAP. This is a 3-year cycle plan. This is the goals that we have here will remain for our 3 years unless we do need to make an adjustment. I'm having a little bit of audio. If you're not able to hear me virtually, if you can help me out in the chat and let me know. There we go. So we have our 3 goals that you see here. Our goals in our 22-23 LCAP include goal number 1, which is centered on academic achievement with an investment of our school board priorities exceeding $176 million. Goal number 2, which is centered on safe and welcoming learning environments with our school board investing over $30 million. And goal number 3, centered on student, family, and community involvement and support with an investment over $10 million. I do pause at this part of the presentation just to remind our participants that our local control and accountability represents one budget within our district. There are many other budgets that we do use to support all of our students, as well as target additional support to students based on the data that we are seeing. So tonight, you will specifically hear information and highlights of actions that we have targeted to our unduplicated pupils. Our unduplicated pupils are represented by our low-income students, English learners, and foster youth students, which make up over 90% of our student population within our school district. You can go to the next slide. In order to make sure that we have transparency with our educational partners and to continue sharing out our LCAP with our educational partners, we have developed some tools this school year to help share this message. We encourage you to share this message as well with those that you interact with. We will place in the chat a link to these documents so that you will have access to them. So we'll start tonight with a very short video that gives you a brief introduction to our local control and accountability plan.
The 2022-23 Local Control and Accountability Plan, or LCAP, describes how San Bernardino City Unified School District will improve student outcomes. Each year, San Bernardino City works with educational partners to create a plan that increases student progress, decreases performance gaps, and reports on the progress made the previous year. San Bernardino City USD currently serves 46,500 TK through 12th grade students who learn in our 72 schools and who are supported by 6,874 employees who embrace the district mission to ensure all students, cradle to career, develop the knowledge, skills, and proficiencies required for college, career, civic, and economic success. To support this mission in 2022-23, San Bernardino City USD will spend over $1 billion overall in general fund expenditures and over $217 million in specific LCAP expenditures. These expenditures support San Bernardino City's LCAP goals, which include maximizing the academic achievement of all students, creating safe and welcoming learning environments, and supporting student, family, and community involvement. To learn more about San Bernardino City USD's goals and plan details, please refer to the full LCAP infographic and supporting documents available online. Together, we're improving our children's education and creating a better future for California.
All right, before I go on to our next tools, I do want to just take a pause to recognize Dr. Funches, our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, who has joined us virtually tonight. Sir, would you like to share some words with the group?
Thank you, Kimber. Glad to be here. Just want to say welcome to everyone. We appreciate your support and your participation in this important work, and I just wanted to say welcome. Thank you for having us. I look forward to all the information and some of the great work ahead of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Funches. We appreciate you joining us tonight, and I know it will be exciting to hear some of the updates specifically from Human Resources in connection with our LCAP and how we have been able to increase our efforts to recruit and retain the best employees here in our district. So tonight, in addition to this video, in the chat, you have links to various documents that we invite you to share with those that you interact with. The first, if you're here with us in person, you also have these as a handout. It came in your packet. So the first one is a 2-page document that you see here in front and back. All of our documents are available in English and Spanish to ensure that we're reaching as many members of our educational partner group within our district community. The 2-page summary provides a very brief overview of our local control and accountability plan. You do see on the upper right-hand corner, the full budget here represented within our district, which, as I mentioned, exceeds $1 billion. With our local control and accountability funds, they're at the bottom of that section at over $217 million. So this gives you a brief introduction. If you have not interacted much with the LCAP, this is a great place to start in addition to the video. But as you're looking at this document, you might want to know more information about what's contained within the plan. And you'll find that in the second link there in the virtual, and then the second handout here in person, which is an 11-page summary of our LCAP. Within that 11-page summary, you will see some of the same information as in the 2-page summary, but then you'll notice it goes into far more detail, specifically around our actions that we have, as well as the metrics that we've assigned to monitor the implementation of our plan. And at the end of the 3-year cycle, evaluate if the actions that we have in place are having a positive impact on our academic and non-academic data. So as you turn the pages through this 11-page document, you'll see that it's organized by the goals, starting with goal number 1 and the metrics that are assigned within goal number 1. And the actions that are within goal number 1 falling on pages 6 and 7. It provides you with a total investment dollar amount within goal number 1. Goal number 2 is reviewed with the metrics and actions on pages 8 and 9. And goal number 3 rounds out the end of our documentation here with goal number 3 falling on pages 10 and 11. This gives you a lot more detail about not only the actions within the plan, but how we are monitoring those. You'll hear some of those data points mentioned tonight in our presentation from assessment and assessment educational technology. You'll hear an update on that, the data that we're using to monitor this implementation. If you wanted even more information, we always have access publicly to our full LCAP, which is over 200 pages. So we know that you probably don't pick that up as light reading at night. So we do want to share with you some tools that help you to engage in this process and have an understanding of our priorities within our district from our school board that are implemented all the way down to our school level. You can go to the next slide. There we go. So before we begin the next portion of this presentation, I do want to start with the introduction of our co-presenter here that will be with us tonight. So you want to come on up? So she's going to be here with us in person, Dr. Susan Keidel, coming to us to share a data update that we're using to monitor the implementation of our plan.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Hello to those that are here virtually and in person. As Kimber said, I am Susie Keidel, and I'm here from Accountability and Ed Tech. And we're going to be looking at the NWEA results, looking at this assessment from the fall of last year to the fall of this year. So students in our district beginning last year began this assessment as a universal tool that we're using across our district to measure students in K-12, their performance in the fall, and then the students take it again in the winter. And then our students in grades TK through grade 2 take it again in the spring. And the kids that are 3rd and up will could take it as an optional assessment in the spring. So specific for tonight, for this recap, we are looking at the fall data from 2021 to the fall of 2022. As I mentioned, this was a new assessment last year. So some of our procedures and school participation was a little less last year when we began, as schools were learning how to navigate the system. So when you look at the number tested, the number's a little larger for the fall of 2022. But we're going to look first at the district in the level of students that were considered on target in reading. And so if you're looking at that for the district, in 2021, we were at 23.7. And then for this current fall that just passed, we were at 21.2 for the district. So you'll see the data there for elementary, middle, and then comprehensive high schools, as well as continuation high schools. What you may notice is that the results indicate a lower percent on target in 2022 compared to fall of 2021. Again, we did have additional students testing, so that may have some contribution to that data. We realize too that this data is not where we would like our students to be. So this is a learning and an area of growth for us. However, it is allowing us to see as a snapshot how students are performing around our district. The second slide, or the next slide, is going to show you the same information for the district in reading from fall of 2021 to fall of 2022. But this is looking at our targeted student groups or by program. So you'll see English learners, the SED population, which is the socioeconomically disadvantaged, and then our foster youth population. So it breaks it down by those. So again, you'll notice our English learners, and they were in the 7th percentile, and they dropped a bit to 6.9%. The socioeconomically disadvantaged was at 22.1 and dropped a bit to 20.2. And then our foster youth, which was at 14.2, and it dropped to 13.7. Again, I would just say that this is, we understand that this is not where we want to be, and we have plenty of work to do, and we have lots of good plans in place to make this, to see growth happening. We are currently in the winter administration window for the NWEA. So we are looking to see some growth in our students from fall of 2022 to the winter of 2023, and that'll be forthcoming. As you move to the next slide, this is now shifting from reading to mathematics. So again, we're looking at fall of 2021 to fall of 2022. And you'll see the percent of students on target, again, at the district level, where we were at 15.6 last fall in 2021. And then this most recent fall in 2022, we were at 17.0. So there was some growth, which is exciting to see. And then again, at the elementary, you'll notice also they grew from 14.9 to 17.1% of students on target. Again, this is not where we want to be ultimately, but at least we are showing growth in this area. Also, middle school had the growth from 14.8 to 18.5% on target. And then finally, our comprehensive high schools was at 16.2 to 17.5. Our continuation schools did show a drop in their scores, as you can see there on the screen. Again, as we look at those program groups that we are focusing on, you can see that on the next slide. And you will see our English learner population had some growth from 6.4% on target to 7.1% on target. Our socioeconomically disadvantaged, or we refer to that as SED, from 14.3 to 15.8. And then finally, the foster youth from 9.1 to 10.3. So some growth showing in the math. As I mentioned, we are currently in the winter administration for the NWEA. That means if you have a student in our district, they are either have tested or they will be tested by February 17th. At the end of that window, we then will be able to compare our fall of 2022 data with the winter of 2023. And as I mentioned, this is a newer assessment for us. So we are only beginning to learn about and implement other resources to support this data that we gather from this test. So we have some cohorts of schools working to learn more about how to use the NWEA data to inform their instruction. And there's a variety of other elements that are sort of being slowly rolled out. We started with just let's get the students taking the assessment and making sure we're getting all students tested. And now moving to let's learn more about how to use the data to inform instruction. And with that, I do not see any other comments or questions in the chat, but if there are some questions, either live or virtually, I'm happy to try to answer those. All right, if something else comes up, Kimber will let me know. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Keidel. In our presentations for our local control and accountability plan, tonight's presentation represents a second mid-year update that we're providing. The first mid-year update was provided to our parent advisory groups, in which we focused on the dollars that have been spent to date for each of our actions, with a goal of spending 100% of the funds by our purchasing cutoff, which happens in April. Tonight, we will focus on the implementation of specific expenditures that are supporting the goals within our local control and accountability plan. So if you want to go to the next slide. We'll start on the educational services side. On our educational services side here, you'll see two sides to our chart, in which we have it in English and Spanish here for you. I don't want to read all of the slide to you, but certainly highlight some of these things that we have put in place in response to our leaders looking at our student data. We do know, as Dr. Keidel mentioned, that this data is something that we are constantly monitoring, and we recognize represents a large amount of needs within our student population at each of our levels, elementary, middle, and high school, and also within our student groups that we focus on in LCAP of our English learners, low income, and foster youth. So in order to improve those data points, which we did see those incremental improvements, and we're looking for those to continue to improve as the students are presently taking their winter administration of that assessment. But to date so far, what we have put in place is we have added culturally relevant libraries for each of our schools. That's every single school at every single level. We're adding books in the hands of students so that they have access to help build their reading skills, both in early literacy as well as in reading comprehension. We have provided for educational field trips so that their students can see the application of their learning that they're doing in class and how that presents itself when we go out into the world. So at each of our levels, again, elementary, middle, and high school, providing educational field trips for them. For our professional development focus areas, we have two focus areas which continue to be a focus area within our school district. The first is universal design for learning, which allows us to work in engaging our students in their learning, addressing any obstacles that might prevent them from learning, and providing multiple opportunities for them to show their understanding of what they're learning, as well as professional learning communities, which allow our certificated teaching staff, our administrators, our district leaders to build teams together that look at our student data and analyze it to determine decisions to best support our students, as well as our families. To support our foster youth students, we did increase our transportation efforts to support our students being able to make it to school, as with the response to coronavirus, as we're entering this endemic or we're in the endemic, we notice that they are a little more far spread out, and we want to make sure we're providing access. So the service of Hop, Skip, and Drive provides additional transportation options for our foster youth students. We also provide supplemental online access for our students to practice those skills, to build their foundational skills for our English learner students, our low-income students, and our foster youth students. And there's some examples there of those programs that are available. And then you'll see some highlights from the elementary and from the secondary. And the highlight I'd like to focus on first is the resident guest teacher program with the support of our human resources department in collaboration with educational services, where we have been able to recruit high qualified guest teachers that support the intervention efforts at our schools. At the elementary level, they're focusing on early literacy with built-in professional development that occurs once a week. And at the secondary level, focusing in the area of math and supporting our students beginning at grade 9. So again, we're using that data to help inform our decisions so that when we come to the end of our 3-year cycle, we're able to see that positive growth within our data. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And you'll see next, these are actions and services that are designed to help support on the student services side, so that we're not only addressing the academic needs of our students, but also the non-academic needs of our students. Most of these actions and the highlights that you see tonight would be tied to our goals 2 and possibly 3, but we'll start with what's at all of our schools and the benefit that they receive from our LCAP dollars, which include access to registered nurses, health aides at each of our schools. That's a 6-hour position. And for the first time, attendance personnel at each of our schools. This was in response to our data analysis within our professional learning communities, looking at our chronic absenteeism and seeing a very sharp rise in the number of students that are chronically absent. So we have dedicated staff now at each of the school sites. We are still continuing to recruit and hire for those positions, but once in place, each school will have somebody dedicated towards attendance and removing obstacles for families, helping to support them with any needs that they might have, and supporting our students to promote positive attendance. We also have access for all of our students to a program called Hazel Health, which is a telehealth program at the school sites. The students are able to visit the office to our health aides, and they can have a video conference with a medical professional that can help do the evaluation if they're, for example, their head is hurting or their stomach is hurting. And the site has access there to help support the students, of course, and always with the permission of the parent and consent of the parent. There is a built-in communication piece between Hazel Health and the parent as well, so that the parent is aware if a student does visit or utilize those services. We also have services for social emotional learning, or SEL, mental health, physical health, dental, and vision and hearing. And this helps to ensure that there are not barriers in the way of our students being able to be successful within their school community. So not only, again, addressing those academic needs, but those non-academic needs that can sometimes be hidden. For some of our schools, these were new highlights that were added as a result of our annual update process last year. Based on our data that we were seeing, we added additional counselors at the elementary level. We increased our efforts towards Saturday school, in which the students are invited to participate in the program. It's an enrichment program on Saturdays, because we know they go to school Monday through Friday. They don't necessarily want to go again on Saturday. So this is an enrichment program that the students have access to, where they're able to recuperate a missed day. So if they had a missed day within their attendance, they're able to recuperate that day to help support positive student attendance. We also have crossing guards as we see increased traffic on our pathways for our students as they make their way to and from school to help support that. In our secondary schools, we also have our Student Leadership Advisory Council, and she must have just stepped out. Did I just miss her? Okay. Oh, she's here. We actually have a representative on our LCAP Parent Advisory Group, and this student representative is elected from the Student Leadership Advisory Council. So this is a very involved student here representing and encouraging our student voice within the development of this plan. So tonight, joining us here in person, we have Crystal Scott as our representative. Did you want to say anything to the group? Got it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really grateful to be here, and I'm really grateful to have this position. And I hope we learned a lot from this.
Yep, that's good. We're glad you're here. We know that Crystal would not be able to be here without the support of her family. So we recognize Mom in the audience as well, making sure that she's able to join us tonight. She also joins us in our parent advisory group as well. So Mom, thank you for your efforts in supporting your daughter in her leadership. Again, just trying to increase the number of active voices. That's right. I think that's Dr. Tikel. It's a little far away from me. Oh, it's Dr. Funches giving a thumbs up. We do want to increase that student voice. So we appreciate your efforts being here tonight and joining us. But that was developed actually as a result of student input, where they wanted to be more involved. They wanted to have an active voice in those things that are directly affecting them. So not only do we have the presentations to our student leadership with our representative here, but we actually present to the full student leadership as well to gather their input. So thank you again for joining us tonight. You can go to the next slide. And we'll go next to our human resources highlights. Our human resources highlights, human resources has been a very, very busy division throughout this school year. There has been an unending recruitment period that has begun from last school year, continues to this day, and plan to continue through the rest of this school year. As our school district, like many other business sectors, struggle with finding employees. And in particular, we want to ensure that we are attracting the most highly qualified employees to our district. So some of our highlights that we have here are our guest teachers. These are also known in other districts as a substitute teacher. We recognize the value that they provide to our classroom. Their title here then is a guest teacher. There are 310 new hires. So this is in addition to the guest teachers that we had in place. We want to ensure that if the teacher is not able to be in the classroom, that there is somebody who is able to fill in that spot. But this also supports our efforts for intervention, as I mentioned previously, with our educational services highlights. Our guest teachers are supporting those efforts. They also provide release time for our teachers so they're able to attend professional development to build their skill and capacity as they are supporting our students. We have hired new teachers this year, so we are competing amongst many other districts. We were successfully able to hire 235 new teachers, and of those 235 new teachers, 65 of them have more than 3 years. So again, really working hard to find the best of the best that's out there to support our students. On the recruitment side, we have certificated and classified. Our classified recruitments, we have opened 119 different recruitment positions within our classified personnel commission. There are some examples of those that are listed here where we're actually going out into the community, presenting directly to our families and parents to gather input as well as to encourage them to join us here in our district. On the certificated side of the house, we provided you with a comparison to show the increased and improved services that we're able to provide. In 2021, 2022, we were able to participate in 12 job fairs. This year, we have participated already in 21 job fairs, and this is counting as Human Resources enters their full recruitment phase that normally would start about now in January, but as I said, has been happening all year long. Dr. Funches, I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add to that as you are leading this work and seeing this success as you're implementing it.
Hey, thank you, Kimber. We appreciate the encouraging words and the feedback. And I just want to say we're all in this together. We are all recruiters. We are all responsible for uplifting this community and making sure that we're being the best representatives for our young people. And so Human Resources is just an extension of everyone here working hard to bring in the best people to serve this community. So with your help, with your support, with our ongoing tenacity and perseverance, we'll be able to replenish our workforce. I'd say over the next year or so, we'll see a difference in the vacancies filled and in the number of employees in our district. So thank you for your patience in this process post-pandemic, and working together, we'll get there. Thank you very much, Kimber.
All right, and if we go to the next slide. There we go. So in addition to our teachers and guest teachers and our recruitment efforts, Human Resources has been instrumental in the implementation of many of the actions within the LCAP, as they did rely on personnel and recruiting and hiring personnel. So you'll see there some additional staffing that has been added at our school sites and at our district level to help support this effort, with overtime hours of our staff working very hard, trying to get things processed as quickly as possible so that we are able to see the benefits of those positions at the school sites. We have college student interns, additional elementary vice principals. You'll see there's 15 positions. We have 49 elementary schools. This provides our elementary schools with additional support at the administrative level so that they're able to focus on instructional leadership. In particular, after looking at our student data, we know that our schools do need that additional support. In our larger elementary schools, where we had one counselor for a very large number of students, we added 5 additional positions to help lower that ratio of student to counselor at the elementary level. We have added MTSS, which stands for Multi-Tiered System of Supports, TOSA, which stands for Teacher on Special Assignment. So these are really intervention specialists that help to guide that data conversation with the staff and looking at the students individually and the supports that they need in order to be successful. This is a position that will be at each of our school levels that will help to build our tier 1 instruction, which is our basic and first instruction that happens from our amazing classroom teachers, and look to the additional support that might be needed from our support staff, our resident guest teachers at a tier 2 or tier 3 level. So each of our school sites will have this. We have been in the recruitment of this and the implementation phase of this. We've completed phase 1 as we enter phase 2 here shortly. Each of our schools will have that position to help support them. We also have LOTE, which is language other than English. Bilingual education has been a priority of our school district for many, many years. We continue to support that priority in helping to ensure that students have access to courses at the secondary level, which would include our middle school and high school. So we added 11 additional positions so that we have additional sections available for students to be able to join those classes. As I mentioned before, we have attendance positions in making sure that there was a position at each of the schools. We did add 25 positions. So just in that first row, really you can see the impact and the importance of our human resources to ensure that our implementation is on track. Other activities though, because I know they want to do the best of the best that our Human Resources Division has taken on, include the workforce comparability study to ensure that we're attracting the best of the best to our district. We are looking at our pay versus the pay of other districts within the classifications of our classified employees. We are surveying our staff for input, as well as building a program called Life by Design, which focuses on wellness of our staff. We do have a lot of attention focused on the wellness of our students. Wellness of our staff is also important. So we have our human resources leading that work. Go to the next slide. So before I go into our next steps, I just want to take an intentional pause in the event that you might have something that you'd like to share. You might have heard an action that is exciting to you, or something that you are seeing implemented at your own school level, or a question that you might have about the data that was presented, or some of the information that was presented. And I invite you to, in person, we have a microphone. So if you would like to share anything, you're welcome to share anything in person. Virtually, if you want to add that in the chat, we invite you to add that in the chat, or you can raise your hand within Zoom. And then I believe we are able to unmute you to provide any input that you might provide. Sometimes it's good to hear and encouraging to hear that you appreciate this, you like this, or you're seeing this at your school site. Those are always words of encouragement, but also if you have any questions, we want to make sure we answer any questions that might come up. As I give you a moment to do that, I do want to recognize another LCAP lead that has joined us, Dr. Beatrice Gonzalez, who is the director of our Family Engagement Office. Dr. Gonzalez, if you would like to, you're welcome and invited to say a few words to the group. I know you're here with us virtually and you might want to put that in the chat. It's up to you, but if you'd like to say words, we invite you to do so. All right, and for those who are joining us in person, I know you can't see the chat, so I want to make sure I share this out with you. She sends her thank yous and welcome to the group. So thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, for joining us. Without her support, we would not be able to hold our meetings here virtually, as we have support from the family engagement in our Zoom tonight. We also have another LCAP lead who has joined us from our Equity, Targeted, and Student Achievement Department, our director, Dr. Will Greer. Sir, if you'd like to say anything, we invite you to either unmute your microphone or add that message to the chat. He's here with us virtually.
Hey, good evening, Miss Sargent. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much. I just wanted to just say hello and just thank you for all of the work that you guys are doing in categorical. I cannot imagine the complexity and the nuance involved in terms of just making sure that the dollars that are coming from the state that are designed to support our most needy students, making sure that those dollars are getting to where they need to go and are, truly used in support of our kids. I just know that there is a lot that goes into that, and you guys just do such a fantastic job, Ms. Sargent, you and your team. So I'm just really, really grateful to work with you guys and glad to be here tonight to learn and to listen. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. And we appreciate you and our LCAP leads who are able to join us tonight. So we'll go into our next steps now. We have, okay, there's a question in line in Spanish. So I think Ms. Brassfield will be interpreting the question online. No, okay. So give me just a second. I'm going to get an interpreter here who's going to give us the translation of it. It's always interesting running the meeting in person and virtual because you you kind of have to look at both and make sure you're capturing everyone. We don't want to miss anyone.
Okay, the question that we have is, el número de estudiantes por maestro es muy bien, el presupuesto que reservaron. In English, the number of students per teachers is well within the budget that was set. So it's a comment. And then we do have a question. The after-hours recruitment activities for teachers that are allocated, what specifically do those include?
So the after hours recruitment, the hiring process is a lengthy process. And Dr. Funches, if I miss anything, I invite you to chime in. It's a lengthy process that involves, having the staff coming in and filling out their paperwork, as well as our background check and fingerprint checking. As we are seeing an increased number of the staff that we are hiring, both certificated and classified, there are only so many hours in the day that you can get that done. The overtime hours represent that additional time to make sure we're processing the paperwork in a timely manner. It also represents the time that we are attending or providing recruitment efforts, which may occur outside of the normal working day, sometimes even on a Saturday, which would obviously not be within the working time of our employees. Okay, we got a thumbs up there from Dr. Funches. All right, so we're going to look at the timeline here and we'll go into some more specifics. So this is a bit of a transition that we're making, where the first portion of the presentation really focused on that mid-year check-in. A mid-year check-in is not something that we are required to provide, but is something very important to our district, in that you are seeing this plan as it's being implemented and you're able to see an update of the data as well as the expenditures. The next portion of the presentation focuses on the process called the annual update. This is a process that takes place each year within a 3-year cycle. So we will write a plan, and then each year we have the opportunity to review our data, to look at our implementation and see if we're seeing those positive changes in our student data. Make any necessary changes that we need to, as well as address any changes that might have occurred as a result of our governor's budget and new programs that are added in or requirements that are changed within the LCAP process or within the documentation. So this happens each year. We are rapidly approaching that time of year when we're doing our annual update. So you'll see here in front of you with the English on the top and the Spanish on the bottom. Between December and February, we are collecting and analyzing data and consulting with our educational partners. This isn't the first time you've heard the word educational partners tonight, and you might be wondering, what exactly does that term mean? Educational partners represents any party that is interested, invested in the education within our district community. So that might mean that that is a student or a parent or a teacher. It can be staff within the district. It could be local businesses within our district. So if you're here tonight, you're listening online, you're here with us in person, or you're part of a school community, you are definitely considered one of our educational partners. Partners being the key word, that we can't do this without you. So we need you in order to complete this work, monitor this work, and help to make sure that we are putting in place the best for our students. So we ask for your input and your questions so that this plan represents not only the voice of our staff, but the voice of all of our educational partners. So that happens December to February. March to April, we continue to collect and analyze data and consult with our educational partners. We use that information for any revisions to the LCAP and for the completion of our dashboard local indicators. The state provides a California dashboard, which goes over our state CASP data, as well as our student non-academic data, such as attendance and suspension, and our college and career data. So each year that dashboard is updated. Coronavirus sort of changed our dashboard and actually suspended it, and we are getting back on track with our dashboard. And that's true for every district. So this year we have our dashboard available online as a public document for everybody to review. And it includes something called our local indicators, and we use input from our educational partners to answer the questions within our local indicators. And you'll see that as part of the presentation of the LCAP are those local indicators for the dashboard. The presentations and consultation with our educational partners comes in the form of meetings such as tonight's meeting, but also the meetings with our parent advisory groups. So we present to our District English Learner Advisory Committee, or DLAC, our District Advisory Council, or DAC, our District African American Parent Advisory Committee, or DAAAC. I call them DAAAC. They're also called DAC as well. With our Student Leadership Advisory Committee, which is our SLAC, our Superintendent Parent Advisory Committee, or SPAC. So you'll see, as we refer to it here in categorical, you'll see us going on tour because we are trying to provide as many opportunities as possible to gather that input for different groups. You might participate in many of those groups, and so you might hear a presentation from me and go to another meeting and say, I feel like I've heard this information. And really, that's really in our efforts to ensure that we're sharing with as many people as possible. That takes place March through April. Beginning in May, we start to share the draft of our LCAP. This is not going to be a complete document. It's unlikely at this time that there would be dollars within the document because we do have to wait for the governor's budget to be released, which happens May 15th. And then we get the rules for it later. So there is a bit of a delay in the ability to add dollars. So in May, we will be presenting a draft of this document, which will go over our goals and the actions within our goals, and then the metrics that are assigned to measure those goals. In June, there are 2 required presentations, one at a public hearing of our school board, which happens at the beginning of June. This will be a public hearing of a mostly finalized draft. Copies are available at our Board of Education building here at 777 North F Street in San Bernardino, as well as online. We also will be surveying educational partners throughout this time and asking for specific questions that you might have after reviewing that draft. And then the final draft going to our school board for adoption at the end of June. Once our school board adopts the LCAP and they also approve the local metrics, that goes on to our county and begins the approval process for our county. That timeline between December and June is what we refer to as our annual update. Try to go, there we go. The function within the development of our LCAP, it has 3 distinct but related functions that you see here on your screen. The first is a comprehensive strategic planning. As this is only one of our budgets within our school district, and there are several that also require a plan, we are very strategic in ensuring that the actions within our LCAP are primarily designated to support those 3 student groups, which are English learners, low income, and foster youth. We ensure that there's meaningful engagement of our educational partners, which is why we try to provide our pause and time for input. We want to hear from you. We want to make sure that your voice is a part of this process, as well as accountability and compliance, which comes in with my office, as well as assessment and educational technology and looking at our data. But then also making sure that what we're doing is meeting the requirements of this process. You can go to the next slide. You'll see here something called the Throughline, and you'll begin to hear more about this as we get into the next presentation for our community meetings, which will take place in March. But it's important that we see this document as a whole document, that it's comprised of interrelated sections. So section 1 is related to what's in section 2 and related to the sections that are at the end of the plan. They should all connect together, and that the document is greater than the sum of its parts. And down below, you'll see several boxes there that show you the sections of the plan. Again, this is a very long document, which my office reads over and over and over, but we know that might not be true necessarily for you, which is why we do provide the summarized tools for you to share. But the plan, it begins with a plan summary, a description of engaging our educational partners, a description of our goals and our actions. In there, you'll also see the metrics are found within that section. Next, you'll see a description of the increased or improved services. One requirement of our LCAP is that our actions that are included are providing increased or improved services for English learner, low income, and foster youth students. So you will see a connection in there back to the previous section, in particular with the goals and actions. And then the last one are for all of our accountants and budget people out there like me, which include our action tables with dollars that are assigned to each of the actions as totals, and a breakdown of those actions as personnel versus non-personnel. So we're going to take a brief look at each of those so that we can see what they look like. If you go to the next section. So again, that is what you see here. Just highlighting in this area, you do see number 6. I'll just point that one out as I don't want to be repetitive. Number 6, you will see information about how we are increasing our staff that's providing direct services to our students. But those other areas are, as I said, those boxes on the previous slide. Thank you. So we'll start first with the budget overview for parents. This document is, this portion is designed really to support our parents and families because the LCAP can represent a large sum of monies. We want to make sure that it's in a friendly and accessible way for our families to understand how much is comprised of the entire LCAP. So this is, you'll see a picture of that on the right-hand side. This is a blank template. This is going to be our template for the 23-24 school year. And as we haven't started that annual update drafting yet, you see no information in yet, but it does provide district expenditures, not only from LCAP, but from other sources as well. And again, it's just a quick snapshot so that you can have an understanding of the size of our budget and how much of that is represented within our LCAP dollars. The second section is our plan summary. Again, on the slide, you'll see a description of the plan summary on the left-hand side, with the right-hand side being a picture of that section, again, blank, as this template was just released, so there's not yet information in there. But it begins with general information about our district and San Bernardino. It includes demographic information that you do find on the plan summary, including our number of students, our number of schools, and our percentages of students that represent our unduplicated pupils, again, low income English learner and foster youth. A summary of the successes that we have seen as a part of this LCAP implementation. So this gets updated each year. Some of the highlights that I shared tonight, this is where you might see those in the successes area. As we get to the inclusion of the additional metrics, we want to make sure that, again, that we see that positive impact so that we can call it a success. And that's what you would see in that section. The next section would be our identified needs. For many years, our identified needs within this cycle has been chronic absenteeism, suspension, and our academics, language arts, and math. You'll see additional information in this section for 2023-24 to include additional student groups that we will be providing assistance to due to identification from our state based on our state assessments. So they will be supported from additional funding as well outside of our LCAP, but you'll see under the identified needs, those student groups as a new piece this school year. You'll see highlights there. Again, these are things that we have in place. We might not see full data yet, but we expect to, by the end of the 3-year cycle, see those as a success, as well as information about a program called Comprehensive Support and Improvement, or CSI. And I know it can be very overwhelming to have so many acronyms. If I say an acronym and you aren't familiar with it or you need more information, I encourage you to raise your hand or add it to the chat or raise your Zoom hand. And I'm happy to explain, but our comprehensive support and improvement schools are identified at the state level based on our state assessments and our non-academic student data. We are required to develop a plan to address the needs that are identified for those schools. And there is additional funding specifically within that program to support those schools. So you'll see an explanation of the process of how we gathered input, what the process was for developing the plan, and how we're monitoring the implementation of our CSI program. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. The next section provides information about how we have engaged our educational partners. Again, we could stick to our minimum requirement of meetings, but in our district, it's a priority to share this information and gather input from a wide variety of our educational partners. So that process is described there. You'll see each of the meeting dates that we have presented to the different groups, as well as topics that we've presented. There will be a summary of the feedback that has been provided so far, and then a descriptions that were influenced by that feedback. This is why it's really important that we do have that, because we keep track of feedback not only from our LCAP meetings, but if we're attending another meeting and we know that this is aligned to our actions and services within our LCAP, we include as much feedback as possible so that in the description here of engaging educational partners, we're able to make those connections of we're looking at our data, we're identifying our needs, we're getting input as these additional services that would increase or improve, and here are the parties that have influenced those, right? So you'll see a description in that area of groups that have influenced those. For example, we received input last year from our student leadership. They'd like to go on more field trips. So you'll see the description that this came from our student leadership group, that they would like to attend field trips. So field trips were added in to our LCAP based on that feedback. Section 4 goes into our goals and metrics. I'm sorry, our goals and actions. Within those, that includes our metrics. I jumped ahead of myself there. So you'll see up at the top where we have our goal for the 23-24 school year. We will continue with our cycle goals, which are the academic achievement. And I'm sorry, we had a parent walk in and I was going to say hi. Our academic achievement, our safe and welcoming school environments, and our parent, student, and community involvement and support. You'll see those goals. These sections repeat for each of the goals. If you have 9 goals, this will repeat 9 times. If you have 3 goals, which is our case, you'll see this section repeat 3 times. Once for goal 1 around academic achievement, a second time for our safe and welcoming environments, and a third time for our parent, family, and student engagement and support. So you'll see the goal there, an explanation of why the goal was developed. This is connected back to our data and being an identified need as a priority of our educational partners, including our school board. You'll see the measuring and reporting results. These are going to be the metrics that we use. Metrics can be an assessment piece. It could be a data point that we use. So you'll see the metrics that we're going to use to monitor this goal. And each year during that annual update process, we provide the outcome. So we're not waiting until the end of the 3 years to see how we did. We're doing this not only at the end of each year during the annual update, but we're also doing it mid-year as well. So this is a continuous data analysis process based on those metrics there. Below that, you'll see the actions. The actions will all be numbered. So if we're working in goal number 1, you would see goal 1, action 1, a title of that action. So in our LCAP, we have AVID as one of our actions. This is a priority for our school sites as we build that college going culture and we build in those support layers for our students so that they're able to access college and career post-secondary. You will see a description which provides information about how the implementation of this program looks within our district. For AVID, this pays for our tutors at the secondary level. It pays for materials to implement the AVID program as we teach our students those organizational skills, as well as professional development for our educators as they integrate those AVID strategies within their instruction. And then at the last 2 columns, you'll see the total funds that are assigned for that action within the goal. The last column says contributing, and you're marking a yes or a no. It will be marked yes if it is principally directed towards low-income English learner or foster youth students, or any one or combination of those student groups. So in our district, our actions are contributing to our student groups because we are using the data of those student groups to identify our needs. Again, our percentage of our unduplicated students is over 90%. So many of our students will fall within one of these 3 groups. But as I mentioned before, we have several other budgets that support every single student within our district. So again, you'll see this for each of our goals and actions. This year for 23-24, you'll see the inclusion of 2 additional goals, which will help to support our student groups that were identified based on student data as needing additional support. There's, before I go to the next section, there's a comment in the chat. So I want to make sure I pause for Miss Erica. Thank you, Miss Erica, and I appreciate she is very dedicated and an active member in many of our parent advisories, joining us tonight and saying thank you for the field trips. So I know this is definitely input from our parents and from our students, and our students have been able to go on amazing field trips from museums to science camp at the 5th grade level. So this has been a very exciting addition based on the input from our educational partners. Is there a hand up too? No. Okay. All right. Just making sure. All right. We'll go into section 4, which is our measuring and reporting results. This is specifically around our metrics. So again, those are our data points that we're looking at. The metrics measure the progress related to what the goal intends to achieve. So if we have our goal around academic achievement, you will see academic metrics. If we have our goal around parent, student, and family support and involvement, you'll see our data points around parent, student, and family support and involvement. A metric indicates the unit of measure for an expected outcome. So this may be an increase of a percentage or an increase of a certain number of points as a whole, as well as an increase for each of the student groups. So oftentimes there is a gap between how all of our students are presenting with their data and where our, for example, our low income students are, or our English learners are, or our foster youth students are. So we want to see those gaps closing. And that's why there is that requirement for the increase in improved services. So you'll see an overall goal for the metric, as well as what that expected outcome would look like for each of the student groups. An action is something that is done to cause the expected outcome. So again, what we put in place should be supporting those metrics that we have, so that we're able to reach the goals that we have set. All right, the next one is our goal analysis. And I know we're getting close here to the end. We're almost there. We're almost there. The next one is our goal analysis. This is required each year as we look at how we're doing so far. Remember, we're a 3-year cycle, so how are we doing so far? So this is a section in which the progress and implementation of the goal is reviewed to ensure that that goal is achieved. Information from the section is used to make decisions and course corrections to the LCAP for the coming year. One of those might be where you anticipated cost, and either the cost was higher than what was expected. We see that a lot presently with our inflation. I know you see this personally as you go to the grocery store and you go to buy things, and they are way more expensive than what your budget is used to. This is true in all industries. We may have budgeted for a conference attendance, and that conference attendance has increased as the prices of other things have increased as well. The next one would be information. It informs the LEA, which is LEA stands for Local Education Agency. It's another word for district. It informs the district's response to the identified needs. So I previously talked about that through line and how the sections are connected to each other. Within our goal analysis, it should connect back to the identified needs that we had. It wouldn't make sense to identify a need and then not address it within your actions, right? So we make that connection again, that this was our identified need, and these are the actions that are now a result of identifying that need. There we go. Section 5 is where we describe specifically how these are increased or improved services. This is a requirement within the LCAP that the services that we provide within our district need to be increased or improved in order to close those achievement gaps, academic and non-academic, for our unduplicated students. So it will ask you to provide information about how much money you've received as part of increased and improved services, and the percentage required, and whether or not you met that percentage. Last school year, there was a change to the educational code that any unspent dollars would be marked as a carryover percentage because the intent of these dollars is to ensure that they're spent on the groups that they're designed for. So this is why we monitor it as the plan is going, to ensure that it's spending at the rate that it should be, so that all of our dollars are spent. The dollars that are not spent calculate into a percentage and would go back into LCAP for the next school year to make sure that you're spending them on the groups that it was designed for. There's descriptions there that you'll see for actions being provided to an entire school across the entire district, and an explanation of how that is meeting those needs. I can see the end. We're nearly there. Section 6 is where we describe how we're increasing our staff that are providing our direct services. It's provided as a ratio of how many adults there are to students. This is because our district does have such a high unduplicated percentage. We receive additional dollars, which are concentration dollars, that are meant to lower that ratio of adult to students. So you'll see a description there of how we are lowering that ratio. Again, you see that connection back to some of our actions from our human resources division. And on to section 7 for my math folks out there. We made it to the action tables. The action tables are where you see the summarizing of the dollars with all of the words of the action plan separated out for the most part. You're able to see if it is increasing or improving services and whether or not we're meeting that required percentage. So these come at the end of our plan and our summary tables often that you find in any budgetary plan. You'll see these summary tables. So these, again, that through line, they are connected directly to the same dollars that are represented up above within the actions. We made it to the end. Dr. Funches is wishing our group a good night. He did have another meeting to attend. I do want to, again, if you have questions, I invite you to put those into the chat. If you have questions here in person, we have a microphone. We're happy to answer any questions, or if you have input, things that you like to hear, such as Erica sharing out about she liked the field trips. Those help us to ensure that, again, we are including that educational partner input into the development of our plan. You will see me all around. If we go to the next slide, but in particular, if you'd like to come to these whole community meetings, the last slide here, which is up on your screen, has those whole community dates listed on them. Our next whole community meeting would be on March 14th with input gathering. This is a movement activity. So while we're going to offer it hybrid, we encourage you to come to this one in person. We do have food and childcare and translation, our interpretation available for you. But this is where you actually get to work face to face with our leads that are implementing this work, ask them questions, provide them specific feedback. And I'll give you an example. As a principal, I'm a former elementary principal. I brought my AVID team with me to the LCAP meetings, and we provided input on how the LCAP can support the implementation of our AVID to include dollars for materials, which wasn't previously part of the LCAP, based on not just my team, but multiple pieces of input. We were able to add that into the LCAP. So it does make a difference. You can make a change. So we do want to encourage your in-person participation, because you'll have the opportunity to speak individually with our LCAP leads. We will facilitate a discussion online as well that will take place simultaneously as we do our in-person activity here, but it will be a bit of a different experience. But we know that we want to offer you both options. But again, just encouraging that in-person. Registration is required. There's a QR code up on the screen for you there, as well as a link. Should you have any questions, we welcome you to give us a call. You can give us a call anytime. The telephone number is there, 909-473-2064. We did record tonight's presentation as well, so that we can share this with all educational partners on our website. The website for our LCAP is very simple to navigate to. It is sbcusd.com/LCAP. So pretty easy to find. You can also find it directly from the homepage of our district. That's where we will post all of our documents, our updates, our surveys, lots of information there for you. Again, just building that transparency. So I don't see any questions. Thank you to Martha for placing that link into the chat tonight. I don't see any questions there. I will stay on, but I want to respect your time this evening as you need to get back to your families. Thank you for joining us both in person and virtually. Have a great evening. Thank you, Dr. Greer, for your kudos. We appreciate you, sir.